Our next speaker is going to beat that in terms of distance. He's from the New York City. He's considered one of the world's best landscape architects. He's the one who designed Australia's new parliament and the designer of the 9/11 Memorial Garden in New York City. After graduating from Harvard, interestingly, he's the third speaker on stage from Harvard, he focused on environment because he truly believes in the healing power of gardens. He's considered amongst America's most influential architects. Who are we talking about? Give a warm Chennai welcome to David Kamp.
One of the things I wanted to share with you today is something that I love, and it's whitewater rafting. I love the exuberance. I love the rush of the water. But I also love the way the river supports you, the way the river surrounds you. And when you're traveling down that river, you are one with the river. Well, like that river, nature surrounds us. Nature supports us. And if we pause and listen hard enough, it says we are one with nature. And when nature thrives, we thrive. And when nature declines, we decline. In many respects, this is nothing special. We literally grew up with nature. Our earliest developments are tied to our threads to nature. And through the centuries, we have found ways to express that. In art, from the prehistoric cave paintings to the modern works of M.F. Hussein, to architecture, to the places we build to live, and the places we build to celebrate the power of place, and the places we build to play, to find respite, to find joy and delight in nature. So what's this thread? What's this connection we have with nature? We all have it. Every culture in the world has it. Well, one theory was developed by a fellow named E.O. Wilson. He's a biologist from Harvard. And he's developed a theory called biophilia. It is literally the affinity we have with other living organisms. Now, it's not this kind of affinity. And as much as I like Bjork's new album, it is not this kind of biophilia. It is this. It is the exhilaration we feel when we are in nature. It strikes a deep chord in us. And in so many respects, we seem to have forgotten that idea. Well, science is helping us rediscover what I'll call a common wisdom. There is a research center in Cornwall, England, called the European Center for Environment and Human Health. And it was set up specifically to study the connections between healthy people and healthy places. I've been working with them for several years, helping guide them some of the research in terms of how we can use design in their research. And they're doing some terrific work. They're studying a range of things, like the connection between biodiversity and human health. When biodiversity rises, human rates of asthma decrease. The role and the power of gardening for individuals who are frail, and the idea of those in care becoming caregivers, that's a key piece in the healing process. And at a very, very different scale, the connections between large-scale agriculture and large-scale ecosystems. And the use of water to create what they call the blue gym, and the effects of pollution on our spiritual and our emotional and mental well-being. The connections to nature in our cities, from the smallest gesture to the largest. How does that begin to build an attitude towards vibrancy in our cities? And finally, the study of the brain, using neuroscience to make the connections between emotions and the environment. A lot of this work started, I would say, 3 or 4 decades ago, actually 3 decades ago, when the World Health Organization redefined its definition of health. It sees health much more holistically, not simply the absence of disease, and that's the key, not simply the absence. They see health as substantive. It is something to build from. It is something that we can use as a building block towards a much better quality of life. And because of that, our ideas about health have been shifting from a reactive approach to a proactive one, finding the strategies where we can build health in our lives. I want to share with you a perspective I have on personal and environmental health. And I call it the fabric of health, where individual threads are woven together to create something quite beautiful. They can also be woven together to create something that's strong and resilient. We are the threads. Together we can create something that is beautiful, that is strong and resilient. But it starts with one individual thread. And it starts with that personal connection each of us has with nature. It has to start from here. Because from that individual perspective, we can coalesce collective perspectives. And those collective perspectives can coalesce into global responses. That's how we build health. Now, I'm a landscape architect, and I'm often asked, well, what's the role of design in building health? Well, I believe that design ultimately is an expression of values. It's an expression of our hopes and our aspirations in the places we build, or the places we choose to build, to live, to work, to play, and to heal. I think through design, we can strengthen our ties to nature and strengthen the ties of individual experiences to larger social and environmental needs. That's the fabric. And it can be expressed in a whole range of scales, from the scale of a city. This is a project that looks at trying to find ways that we combine human history with ecological history to find a sustainable approach to raising sea levels. This is an interesting project in New York City called the High Line. Many of you may know about this. What it is actually, there were a series of elevated railway lines that ran through Manhattan. They have been recreated as a park. So it's a beautiful idea to change the value of something that was once built for commerce to now being built for nature. We have several projects being built along the Higher Line, and each one of these projects takes this idea of trying to weave nature into the infrastructure of the building itself. And that actually brings up the next idea of weaving nature and architecture together, weaving built systems and natural systems together to speak as one voice. But ultimately, it means bringing design down to the scale of one individual. The idea of intimacy in design and the power of intimacy. A lot of our work deals with individuals who have challenging health needs. And this is a special project in my heart. It's a garden we built for individuals with dementia. For these individuals, nature is often seen as a threat. Our first chore was to find ways that we can bring nature back into their lives, providing opportunity and choice for each individual to connect with nature in their own way, on their own terms, and at their own pace. Our next idea was, how do we begin to bring nature back into the daily routine of their lives? We worked carefully with the therapists and a lot of the staff members and said, well, we can put birdhouses outside and bird feeders. They can begin to feed the bird feeders. That's part of a routine. They're contributing to their community. One of the things we realized, if we design the birdhouses at the right height, they're lifting off the tops. They're beginning to use their upper body skills and muscles. They're also using hand-eye motor coordination skills. So simply the idea of filling a bird feeder begins to fill all these niches back in their lives. Therapy, contributions. The simple gesture of a bird feeder can achieve that. That's what I mean by intimacy in design. Another project that I want to share with you is also very special to me. We've all seen this iconic photo of what happened on 9/11. And there was the crash in New York, there was the crash in Washington, but there was also a crash in Pennsylvania. The flight was initially intended, we believe, to have gone back to New York City. But the passengers realized that they were on one of the hijacked planes. They fought the hijackers, and they brought the plane down in a small town in Pennsylvania. We were asked by the U.S. Forest Service to come and help them find a way to deal with this. How can we help communities deal with this level of tragedy? So we went out to 9/11. We went out to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, about a month after the crash, and we started to just talk to people. We began to talk to the firemen, to the firemen's wives, to the teachers, to the children. And we realized after a couple of days that we needed to honor these heroic acts that these individuals on the flight did, but we also needed to honor what it means to be a community in a time of crisis. Somerset County is located in the west part of Pennsylvania. It's known for its sugar maple trees. It was once its industry. They had a lot of maple syrup happening there. That declined, the mining declined. There was very little there to establish a sense of identity. So what we did was propose the idea of planting trees, simply planting groves of trees. The idea there is that these groves are happening all over the county. They're happening along roadsides, they're happening in front of schools, in front of parks, in front of libraries, in vacant lands, no signage. The whole idea is that as you drive around the county on a daily experience, let's say going to the prom, going to the grocery store, going to a funeral, you're reminded of what it means to be a community. Once we proposed this idea, we realized we needed a lot of trees, thousands of trees. So we talked to the technical college nearby, and we realized as we began to talk to the professors there, well, these students could grow the trees, they could plant the trees, they could tend the trees. And we also realized most of these kids stay in this county their entire life. So we realized what we had the chance to do was not only nurture and celebrate life and the sense of community for this generation, but for generations to come. So these kids who plant the trees, grow the trees, nurture the trees, will bring their kids and their grandkids here. It was a powerful idea about celebrating that sense of community and that sense of continuity, all through the simple act of planting one tree. A lot of this work reminds me of the idea of a raindrop or a pebble in the pond, and the ripples that's created extend far and wide. Individual gestures and individual acts can have a far-reaching effect. They can become part of a collective idea. They can also find voice for active approaches, active ideas about bringing health back into our lives, about building health. And it all boils down to that simple pebble. And that pebble is you. Thank you.